Hi, Kevin Walsh here, and I'm going to be talking about G.J. Stevens' In the End. I listened to the audiobook. It took me about 2 weeks, 3 weeks to listen to this to completion, right after I finished Dead Island Operation Zulu by Alan Gamboa. So I jumped into this one because he was another author that was kind of kicking around in the groups, and I wanted to read it. I looked at the Amazon page, and he had a lot of good reviews. So I'm like, wow, dang, I better pick this up. And I had a couple of audio credits to burn, so hey, great, great news for me. I still have like 2 credits to burn after this, but let's get into the review. So the audiobook is narrated by Jim Harborn, and he has a good voice. Very, very smooth, and particularly for the first like 10 chapters of this book, it was very smooth to listen to. The way he narrates is very almost calm. So like the first like maybe 5 chapters of the book had this really relaxed feeling to it, despite everything that was going on, which has actually really worked out because the first 5 chapters is a lot of scene setting, and the author really gives us some of his writing skill there, where he describes very well. He describes the characters' interactions and emotions very well. Like I really felt I was in the character's shoes, and sensing the world going through. Maybe that's because it was a first person perspective and it's been a while, but he does the first person perspective well. There were moments where he could have used less filter words, like, looked, watched, saw. Since we were already in the reader's shoes, we didn't need those words as often, and it kind of pulled me away from the story a little bit. There was a little bit of a second point of contact. But otherwise, then he has like this great handle on the senses, and I really anything that was happening to the character, the way he described it made me really feel the impact of everything and how the character was reacting, and everyone was reacting realistically, like it was a real story. We got a realistic look at an apocalyptic event happening, and the way it started off. Very enjoyable, and with the narrator, it was like Jim Harborn is like the smooth jazz of narrating, and the way he was delivering particularly with those first 5 chapters, with the writer's, very descriptive and very vivid description of what's happening to the characters, I felt very attuned to the story, and it was a real experience. It was almost calming to actually listen to the story. The writing was smooth, and he was giving the narrator, a good writing description to work with, and it was really good. It gave me these weird like 28 days later vibe in those first 5 chapters, which is, I don't know if that was intended, but that was what I felt. The scene where you see the character walking through kind of like this empty London, and that was like the thematic setting for like the first 5 chapters of the book. It was like that. It was just desolate, and you could feel how desolate it is for the character, and the author was describing that very well about what was happening. Like, something had happened, and it was just very one strange thing to the next. Much later on in the book, we know what's happening in the act, and there's a lot more action coming along. And the action was good. I do feel like there were moments where he could have delivered it a bit better. There were moments with the action, particularly with the choreography, where it was a little disjointed, maybe. Um, Not to like a horrifying degree, but there were moments where I was just listening back and I'm like, wait, what happened? Maybe it was because it was the audiobook experience. I think it was because I was so into the character's shoes, because it was a first person perspective, and he was very good at making you feel like you were in the character's shoes. Sometimes that worked to his advantage very well. Like when there's a lot of crazy stuff happening, he understands that you can only give the reader what the character is supposed to be seeing. So if it's chaotic and frantic, he was trying to get that out with his writing. That the scene is frantic and chaotic. But as someone who was listening to the audiobook of it was a little jarring. So maybe it was just a disconnect between the written word and the audiobook narration. Maybe I would have enjoyed it or understood it a lot clearer if I was reading it on paper, but I won't know until maybe the next book I'll read on paper. But that brings me to my next subject. The point of view. He excels at first person point of view. He does it very well. However, at some points in the story, we jump to other people's point of view. Some people, we jump to their point of view, and there's no real good reason for it. Some side characters who, they're not there for very long, but we jump to like their point of view about how they came to where they were, and some of those chapters were just kind of unnecessary. There weren't too many of them, but there were enough that kind of pulled me away from the story. So that, I like the first person point of view sometimes. I prefer third, but when the first person point of view is done well, it could be a fun experience, especially with the narrator and his writing style. But when there's the first person perspective and we jump from multiple people, and at one point we were jumping quite a bit, I find that a little jarring, but that's probably a personal preference. I just didn't like that as much. But by the time the book came to its conclusion, the story had really come together. Despite these little hiccups here and there, the story comes together into a really complete tale of survival, and about the characters not only going through the experiences of their senses, and the author does very well describing that. We understand the ramifications of everything by the end of the book, and we really feel the characters. We feel the weight of their decisions, and we feel the impacts of the decisions of others to them around them. And it's done in a very realistic way and a very well thought out way. And that's probably G.J. Stevens' strongest asset is understanding character motivation and how it links together with the events of the book. And I want to talk more about the zombies. He does very good describing the zombies. He gives us great zombie horrors, but I think more importantly, this is a story about the characters and how they react to it. And there are some cool zombie original stuff in here. I don't want to say any more than that because it could spoil the experience for the reader. But there are some cool zombies in here, and some attempts to be a lot more original than just a survival story. But overall, this is a good story. I had a good time, and I'll probably some point down the road I'll probably purchase one of the sequels or another series that he's working on. It's definitely an author that I like the style of, and I kind of want to see him try third person because I think he could do well in third person, but that's really up to the author's style, and so that's not really for me to say, but I do look forward to more, and I give this book 2 thumbs up. It was really good, and the audio experience is great. So that was my review of G.J. Stevens. In the end, a good read. I definitely recommend it. And I don't know what audiobook I'm doing next. I haven't really decided yet. So, I'm going to have to probably spend the evening on Audible trying to figure out. I will let you know that I'm quite picky when it comes to picking out my titles. But, if I do see Jim Harborn more, if I might give him a listen if I want to look for a nice relaxing evening to listen to a smooth jazz-like voice. But anyways, it was a good book, and I look forward to reading more. You guys have a good day, and keep reading.